If you're like most anglers who have spent a few minutes on a borrowed kayak only to realize you spent a whole day fighting to keep your hands free, you know the hesitation that comes with buying a new boat. You're scared of splurging on a kayak that looks great on paper but ends up being a clunky, uncomfortable, or just plain useless piece of plastic when you try to actually catch a fish. You also don't want to waste space in the garage on something you'll barely use. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. That's why I spent the last few weekends actually taking the Brooklyn 10.5 pedal single out on a local reservoir, a slow-moving river, and even a short trip out to a nearby lake where the wind can get a little punchy. I wanted to see if the pedal drive promise translates into real hands-free fishing time, if the storage hatches hold enough gear for a day on the water, and whether the steering feels reliable when you're trying to line up a cast with a current. Below is what I learned, and who I think will get the most bang for their buck. First, a quick picture of the setup. The Kayak is a Sighton-top model about 10.5 feet long, built from a lightweight composite that the manufacturer says is adventure-ready. The biggest claim is the flipper pedal drive, 2 pedals under the footwells that turn a set of hidden fins, propelling you forward without the need to paddle. The system is hand-operated, so you can still use a paddle if you want a burst of speed or need to maneuver in tight spots. There's also a rudder that you control with a lever on the side, giving you precise steering when you're lining up that perfect bass bite. The first thing I noticed on the water was how natural the pedal motion feels. After a short warm-up, the legs settle into a rhythm that's almost like riding a bike. You're not constantly pulling a paddle through the water, which means your arms stay free to manage rods, reels, and a cooler. In practice, that translates to longer fishing sessions without the fatigue you normally get from paddling for hours. When I was standing on the dock waiting for the sun to rise, I could pedal a steady 34 miles per hour while my hands were already on the rod, ready to cast as soon as the fish started moving. That hands-free benefit is the core value proposition, but it does come with a hidden trade-off. The pedal drive adds a bit of mechanical complexity, and I noticed that if you're riding on a very shallow lake with a lot of weed, the fins can catch on underwater debris. It's not a frequent problem, but you do have to watch the depth and keep the drive clean after a day of fishing in weedy spots. For most open-water anglers, that's a small price to pay for the convenience, but if you spend most of your time in heavily vegetated backwaters, you might find the drive more of a nuisance than a help. The storage layout is surprisingly thoughtful for a kayak of this size. There are 2 sealed hatches, one forward, one aft, each big enough to stash a tackle box, a small cooler, and a dry bag. I was able to fit a 12-inch rod, a medium-sized cooler with a couple of bottles, and a full set of fishing lures without feeling cramped. The hatches sit flush with the hull, so they don't create drag, and the seals held up perfectly when I tipped the kayak to retrieve a big catfish that had taken the line deep. The only downside is that the storage isn't modular. You can't swap out the hatches for larger compartments without a bit of DIY, so if you need a full-day expedition setup with a big dry suit or multiple coolers, you might outgrow the space quickly. Comfort is a subtle but important factor. The seat is an aluminum frame with a molded foam cushion, which feels more supportive than the cheap inflatable seats you see on entry-level kayaks. On a 4-hour outing, the seat didn't develop the pressure points you often get after a few hours on a flat-bottom plastic seat. That said, the seat doesn't have an adjustable backrest, so if you're taller than 6 feet or have a long torso, you may find yourself leaning forward a bit after a while. It's not a deal-breaker, but it's worth knowing before you commit. Now let's talk about who should actually consider buying this kayak. If you're a serious freshwater angler who spends at least a few days a month on the water, value hands-free propulsion, and need a stable platform for casting and reeling, the Brooklyn 10.5 pedal single is a solid match. Its 420 pounds capacity comfortably handles 2 adults plus gear, so you can bring a friend or a kid along for a day trip without sacrificing stability. The pedal system shines on larger bodies of water where you can maintain a steady pace and focus on finding the right spot. If you already own